This video is going to cover the login and basic instructions to use the My Driver Log portal to manage your electronic logs. To start with, you're going to need three pieces of information to log in. The first is your driver ID, which is your same ID that you use to log into the vehicle on the SOCON device. Our DOT number is 337, that will not change. And the password, the first time you ever log in, is just password, and then you'll be able to reset it to whatever you want it to be. So eventually it'll be your customized password that you want to be sure that you remember. If you ever do forget your password, you should be able to click on this password hint, and it'll provide whatever hint you made to help remind you of whatever your password actually is. So when you log in to the portal, the first thing that's going to pop up is this box for driver review. This is important before you depart on a trip to take a look at this and review your logs and make any corrections or approvals that are needed. There are two items that this will notify you of. One is to review edits. These are if somebody has edited your log, you need to approve each of those because, again, they are your logs. You need to make sure that whatever was changed is correct and you have approved of it. And the other one is to sign logs. This is primarily for logs on off-duty days that the system created. You still need to sign your off-duty days just like you used to on paper logs when you would go off-duty. So I'm going to start with the review edits. Now mine actually does not have any edits to review, but if you did, what you would see is lines of all the changes that were made, and all of this information here at the top would be filled in. So it would tell you who made the change. It would tell you from where, most likely from the computer, the time that the change was made, the time of the event that actually was changed, the vehicle number of that, the location of that, and other additional information that you can scroll across here and take a look. So it's important that you review all of these and then either approve or reject. You would have two check boxes on each of these lines. You would check approved if you would say that it was okay. You would click on down through those, and then you always want to save after you've made a change. So you would approve them or reject them as needed, and then you would want to save in order to make sure that they actually were saved. If you didn't save and just exited, those approvals would not be logged, and essentially you'd be walking out the door without a fully accurate log history. The second item that is up here on the tab, so I'm going to close out the driver approval, is the unsigned logs. This is the second pop-up. These are, again, off-duty logs that the system created that you still need to sign. It's important that you sign these before you walk out the door so that, again, you have an accurate previous 7-day history for your 70 and 8 calculations. So I was off-duty this weekend, and it'll be in date order with the oldest at the top. So I was off-duty the 9th and the 10th. So these are correct for 24 hours. So again, I'm going to click I agree that those logs are accurate and save, as you always want to save. And you get the pop-up notification here that you are certifying the selected logs are true and correct. Your signature will be added to each of the selected off-duty logs. Now I have a lot of unsigned logs on here just because I have been logging all the way back to December, and I haven't been driving too very often that I've updated these. Yours, when you first log in, will only go back to the day that you were actually activated on electronic logs. So you're not going to see a full 6 months back. It's just going to be back to when you were activated for electronic logging. So I've saved those. I can close that out, and now I get to the main log display page. Looking up here at the top, you have a couple items of information. Obviously it's saying who you are, so your name will be there. And then you have the ability to fill in the date. It's going to default to today's date in that box, so you're looking at today's log. If you wanted to change this, you can select any date you want. That would be the first log in the series that you're looking at, so you can go back in time. Obviously if you go forward in time, it's not going to show anything, but you can go back the full 6 months that the logs are held to look at any date. By clicking that, you would change the date, and then actually to get the new log up, you hit this refresh symbol. These circular arrows here is refresh. So again, I looked in the future, which there's nothing. If I had selected a date in the past, we'll go back to July 7th, And so you see July 7th is the first, and then it goes back the 8 days. It defaults to looking at 8 days, so the current day and the previous 7, because that's what we typically care about for your 70 and 8 calculations. If you only wanted to look at 1 day, you can enter 1 in that box, and again you would click the refresh button, and now you only have 1 day to look at. Other pieces of information up here is that it tells you your current status and how long you have been in that. So whether you were driving, whether you were on duty or off duty, or sleep or berth if it were a factor, that's going to tell you what your current status is and how long you've been in that status. That again does update in real time, so even while you're out on the road, we can pull your log up and we can see exactly how long you've been driving since your last stop, all the type of information. You also have up here your 70 and 8 calculations. We pay attention to the last 8 for total time worked. If you're going into Canada, they care about the last 14, so that information is here as well. And then over here on the right hand side, again, you have your breakdown of our hours of service rules, the 10-hour rule for driving, how much you've used on that day, your 15-hour rule, again, for not driving past total cumulative work of 15 hours, and then again your 70 and 8-hour calculation. The nice thing about the 70 and 8 is that it knows what your last day is. It's going to drop off, so it already calculates how much time you're going to have tomorrow. So if you were had 45 hours available today, but you're going to drop a 10-hour day off tomorrow because that's your current 8th day, it would be 55 hours on here available tomorrow, for example. So that is a helpful piece of information if you're getting up against limits. Other items to look at here, the details pane allows you to open up all the comments. So this essentially is your comment block in your written log. So it shows all the information that you've done and your duty status changes. So you can see here, I signed in here in Greenville. It calls Greenville Shenango based on GPS coordinates, but that is correct. Signed into Asset 231 at 14:55 on July 7th. So on duty, it records all that, and then all this information automatically populates for the company address and everything else that's on here. And then you can see I essentially just drove around a couple times trying to get the system up and running correctly on this day. So multiple duty status changes, on duty, off duty, on duty, off duty, then some driving time, and all the way down through here. Below all of these comments, on a typical day, again, you're going to see all of this when you initially sign in to do your pre-trip, when you first start loading, when you first drive, when you stop again to unload or pick up, whatever is appropriate. You're going to see all these duty status changes, their corresponding time, and the GPS location that they correlate to. Down here then, on each day, you're going to see a summary of the miles, the assets you drove for commercial motor vehicles, and again, we only do care about the asset number for commercial vehicles. That's our 13 and larger passenger vehicles, our minivans, for example. Asset would be none because they're not a commercial vehicle. It's going to populate the number of miles that you drove in that vehicle. Now in this case I just took it for a lap around the parking lot, so I didn't really accumulate any miles, but you would typically see the miles reported from the odometer of that vehicle summarized here. And those miles are going to ultimately become the miles up here that are totaled for your day on your graph area of your log. The final section that you see down here in the comments area is if you had any violations, they're going to be summarized here. So if you exceeded the 10-hour rule for any reason, it's going to show that you exceeded the FMCSA 10-hour rule, the vehicle you were in at the time that you exceeded it, the start time. So if you went over at 3 p.m. but drove until 3:10, it's going to show violation from 3 p.m. until 3:10 when it ended. That violation will be there regardless of whether you had an adverse condition or not. So just recognize the system doesn't know what your adverse condition was or how long your delay was. You have to tell it that, but it's going to say, hey, you're in violation. So that same example, if you were 10 minutes over from 3 o'clock to 3:10, but you had a 30-minute delay due to an accident that you had marked on an adverse condition, well, no, you obviously weren't really in violation because you had the adverse condition for those additional 30 minutes. But it will still show on here, and that's when they would refer to the adverse condition to see that you're okay because there was that traffic accident. It is always important before you depart on a trip to go to that current day that it's going to default to and review your previous 8 days. So I'm going to go to today, July 11th. I want to see the previous 8 days. That are loaded up here. It's important that you do this so that you are sure that your logs are correct and accurate before you depart on your trip. Again, you are held to the 70 and 8 day rule, 70 hours and 8 days, so you need to make sure that all of those previous 8 days are correct. So you would want to go down through these, take a look at them, make sure that everything reported correctly if you were previously on a trip, or that you had entered everything correctly if you were off duty, or if you had to create logs, for example, if you work at another job during the week, that type of stuff. So you just want to make sure that your logs are correct before you walk out the door, because these, the current day and that previous 7 for your total of 8, are going to download to the vehicle when you first log in. So it's important, and that's the reference then, if you were to get inspected on the side of the road by the DOT, that is what they're going to look at. So you need to make sure that they're accurate, because if they aren't, they're now looking at inaccurate information, and they're not going to buy it if you say, oh yeah, I needed to make a change to that and I forgot. So again, they can put you out of service, or they could give you a violation if there was something that was wrong on your logs that you didn't correct before you left. And again, if you make any corrections or changes to anything that needed, you always want to be sure to save. So if you just leave, if you click the X up here to close the browser, or you log off and you don't save, it's going to be gone. And if the changes you made, and again, now you don't have accurate logs out there on the road. Our next several videos are going to cover some of the common errors and procedures that we will apply.